Good morning, and welcome to this service of worship at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. My name is Reverend Bethany Russell Lowe. This is Otis, and I have the great pleasure of serving as your minister. And Otis is a PK, a preacher's kid. Our community is as varied as the blooms of the Sonoran Desert. Whoever you are, whoever you have been, and whoever you are on the path to becoming, I invite you to bring your whole self here and now. I extend a special welcome to any visitors who may be joining us online this morning. I invite you to fill out a guest information card. Our administrator, Mary Weiss, is going to post that in the YouTube chat right now. And we will meet on Zoom for social hour right after the services. The link to the Zoom room will be in the e-blast. It was in the e-blast this morning, and it will be posted at the end of service too. There are, I haven't counted, but there are 2 handfuls of us here in Holland this morning, although you will only see some of us. You will see myself and our worship associate, Betsy McMillan. You might not see our child care provider this morning, Kaylee Weiss. Also here this morning is our chaplain, Reverend Julie Olson, our board president, Jody Bergedick, and our fabulous tech team, Cassandra Klein, Liz Ravenwood, Larry Newhouse, and Cynthia Johnson are waving to you right now. Thank you to the wonderful tech team. Indoor in-person meetings are still not permitted on our campus, unfortunately, per our policies. They will be allowed once Pima County has been at a high risk level on covidactnow.org for 7 continuous days. We are still in the very high category, and it seems like we might be there a while longer. But outdoor gatherings are permitted. If you need to reserve space or you want to have any of your committee meetings or a social gathering here on campus, just get in touch with our administrator, our front office, and we can make sure the space will be available for you. You saying welcome? Welcome. We are so glad that you are here this morning. These words of call to worship at the beginning of this holiday season are from Gwen Matthews. In the dark, swoops of evergreen garlands with small white lights decorate an outdoor fence. As December opens up before us, we welcome in the gift of reflection. We turn towards our holiday celebrations and search for common threads of meaning. We begin with Yule, the winter solstice, and we are invited to explore dualities, cycles, and seasons, and to witness the holly king being overcome by the oak king. Yule reminds us that we all partake in the miracle of renewal. Hanukkah, the festival of lights, commemorates a time of miracles when the faith of the Jewish people sustained them to reclaim their holy temple and keep the light of the menorah burning for 8 days. Christmas, the celebration of Jesus' humble birth in a manger, offers us to revisit the miracle of birth and the desire to find saviors to heal the scars of humanity. Here, in our congregation, you are just as much a holiday miracle as the turning of the earth, as persistence and dedication to a faith, as the creation of each new life. We see the love you give to others, the space you create to hold one another's joys and sorrows, and the generosity and spirit you entrust to this community. You are the holiday miracle. This community is one of miracle makers.
Good morning. Now, if you have a chalice or a candle at home, I invite you to light it as Reverend Bethany lights our chalice here in Holland. And please join me in these words for chalice lighting from Reverend Leslie Takahashi. All that we have ever loved and all that we have ever been stands with us on the brink of all that we aspire to create. A deeper peace, a larger love, a more embracing hope, a deeper joy in this life we share.
Ma'oter Yeshuati Lechana El Shabeach Tikon Bet Tefilati V'sham Toda Nizabeach Le'et Achim Matbeach Mitar HaNabeach Az egmor b'shir mizmor Chanukhat HaMizbeach Az egmor b'shir mizmor Chanukhat HaMizbeach. Rock of ages, let our song praise your saving power. You amidst the raging foes were our sheltering tower. Raging they assailed us, but your arm availed us, and your word broke their sword. When our own strength failed us, and your word broke their sword. When our own strength failed us. Children of the prophets
tyrants disappearing, we shall see nations free, tyrants disappearing.
Our earth is strong. It can hold our pain and our joy, our love and our anger. Our shared bowl, which we use for joys and concerns each week, is strong enough to hold the big rocks, our collective celebrations and mournings, and also the smaller stones that will be added to signify our individual joys and sorrows. This week, I celebrated that so many people around our country were able to spend Thanksgiving once again with their loved ones. But at the same time, I mourned for the families of the victims of the Kenosha, Wisconsin shootings and the family of Ahmaud Arbery, who will never be able to spend even an ordinary day with a loved one they lost to racism, stupidity, and senseless gun violence. We who live in the desert know that water is a life-sustaining and scarce resource. Let us remember these desert people who came first in this place. We honor the Hohokam, the Yavapai, the Tohono O'odham, the Yaqui, and the people who no longer exist as tribal entities here in Arizona. Let's remember those who are walking through our desert right now without access to water. We pour water from a plastic jug, similar to the ones used by those seeking to assure greater access to water in the desert, like our ministry partner, No More Deaths. If you have a joy or sorrow to share, I invite you to type it into the chat or speak it out loud wherever you are. As you do that, Reverend Bethany will place pebbles into the water to symbolize the joys and sorrows within our community. The pebbles create ripples of hope, even as we are far apart.
For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible,
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again.
For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause,
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again.
for each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others,
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again.
For the selfishness that set us apart and alone.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We
for falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For losing sight of our unity.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For these and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
Thank you to the choir. For the joys and sorrows from the chat this morning, I will lift up Georgia Conroy, who lost her husband Richard just a little over 2 weeks ago. We are holding you in love, Georgia, and I know you all have been doing that well. She is feeling it. And I will also offer my own prayer of grace as all of us navigate new technologies in the ways that it just doesn't work sometimes. And invite everyone to take a breath if tech is not working for the way you want it to this morning. And I invite you now to join me after that breath in a spirit of meditation or prayer or contemplation, whatever is your own way of centering yourself. Close your eyes or look down at the ground. Turn your attention inward to your thoughts and feelings. And I'm going to invite you to reach back into your memory and bring to mind 2 moments, 2 feelings. I will invite you to think about how you felt in those moments and to bring the feelings from your memory into your present state of being. First, remember a time you felt grateful. Think of a time not when you said you were grateful or what you were grateful for, but when you really felt in your body gratefulness. Maybe someone brought you a meal, a present, or some help you didn't even know you needed. Maybe something or someone arrived unexpectedly at just the right time, in just the right way, with just the right energy. Maybe you finally gathered at long last with some being whose presence makes you feel a little lighter, a little warmer, a little more grounded. Whatever memory is attaching itself to you, settle in. Remember what it was like to be filled up with gratitude. Where in your body do you feel that gratitude? What sensations or movements or urges come up in you? How does the feeling of gratitude change you? Did the gratitude in you change anything beyond you? I invite you to put your hands on the place in your body where you feel the gratitude. Breathe into that place. Let it spread throughout your body if it's able. Remember that all it took to access this feeling was to remember. When you are ready, release your hands back to a resting position. Gratitude can feel like thankfulness, and when it comes in large doses, it can also manifest itself as what I will call awe or reverence. Maybe you have another word for that. So I invite you to remember now a time where you felt awe. Maybe you call it reverence. Maybe you have another word for it. When you felt gratitude, not just for a thing you are part of, but gratitude because you are part of a thing that is bigger than yourself. When did you last feel awe? Maybe you were on a mountaintop looking over a wide expanse. Wow. Or on a desert trail watching plants and animals thrive together. Whoa. Or maybe you were on a walk in your neighborhood watching the sunset, seeing children playing. Maybe you were inside, seeing a striking piece of art, a play, hearing a song, tasting a bite of food. When did you last feel awe? Where in your body can you feel that awe? I invite you now to take a moment, put your hand on the place in your body where the awe is. Relax there, let it spread if it will. Follow the impulses of your body to enact the feeling you are having. Maybe you'll stretch your arms out from your body, broaden your shoulders, lengthen your back. Maybe you'll put your body in a posture of praise, whatever that looks like to you, hands held together. Your head might be bowed. Maybe you're more feeling like you want to yell with joy or shout a phrase like yes, yes, yes to life. Whatever that feeling of awe is bringing up in you, do that now. And remember that all it took to access these feelings was just to remember.
And if we are lucky, gratitude becomes a habit. Or at least that's what Anne Lamott writes in her small little book, Help, Thanks, Wow. She goes on to say that, quote, it begins in our hearts and then dovetails into behavior. It almost always makes you willing to be of service, which is where the joy resides. It means you're willing to stop being such a jerk when you are aware of all that has been given to you in your lifetime and in the past few days. Sometimes when we feel so incredibly grateful and filled with awe, the only thing that we can do is to do something kind or generous or something that serves someone else. This story is about that thing. It is called Ordinary Mary's Extraordinary Deed, written by Emily Pearson. One ordinary day, skipping on her way from her ordinary school to her ordinary house, she passed an ordinary vacant lot filled with ordinary bushes growing ordinary blueberries. Ordinary blue and juicy and luscious, lovely berries. Well, Ordinary Mary picked the ordinary berries and brought them in a big brown bowl to Mrs. Bishop's porch. This made Mrs. Bishop very, very happy. So she baked a big batch of blueberry muffins and thought of 5 people who might have brought those beautiful berries. Then she secretly gave each one of them a plate. How great! 5 people got a plate. One of those 5 people was her paper boy, Billy Parker. And when Billy saw his name on the note in the driveway on a plate, he quickly parked his bike and ate every crumb. Oh, yum, 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 he ate every crumb. This made him so glad that the next 5 people got their papers on the porch and not in the bushes where he usually left the paper. In fact, they were handed right to the people. One of those 5 was Mrs. Morey, who was so amazed that he smiled for 10 hours on the airplane and then said to 5 different people who had heavy bags, "Here, let me help you." He smiled, and they did too. One of those 5 was Mario, whose cranky little boy James stopped crying when Mr. Morey played peekaboo with him until their ride came. Then he waved goodbye, and Mario exclaimed, "How strange that a stranger would be so kind." And the next day, when he was out shopping, once, twice, 5 times, he did something nice for 5 different people, 5 times without stopping. One of those 5 was Joseph, old and bent and gray in front of her in line in the produce stand. When he said, "I guess I counted wrong. I don't really need these oranges," little James reached out to him with an orange from their basket, and Mario put a coin in Joseph's hand and said, "Here, take this. The orange is on us." As Joseph shuffled to the bus, his heart was full and his eyes were wet, and his hands did helpful things for the next 5 people that he met. One of those 5 was Sahar, a college girl who was off to see the world and stopped at Joseph's shop. When her bag broke and her things fell all over the floor, she said, "Oh, what will I do?" Joseph said, "This is for you." And he gave her a new green bag woven with his own hands in red and purple and green. "Oh, thank you," she said. "It's the loveliest bag I've ever seen." When Sahar left, she felt sunny as noon, and she had to shine on 5 people soon. One of those 5 was Sophia, whom she had met on a boat, looking like the world might end, looking like someone without a friend. "What beautiful blue eyes you have," Sahar said, "and they're just the color of flowers in your lovely dress." "Yes," said Sophia. "Oh, yes," said Sahar. The beautiful blue eyes shed a happy tear, and the boat trip was through. Sophia called 5 people to make them happy too. One of the 5 was Tom, her son, the doctor, who was having a very hard day. "Hi," she said. "I love you, Tom." "How great to hear your voice," he sighed. "I always need my mom." Dr. Tom was so cheered up that on his next break, he brought a big bunch of bright balloons for 5 young patients, and he handed them out right there and then. One of those 5 was Peter, a little boy who went home from the hospital that very day. Gratitude for the big bunch of bright balloons filled him and thrilled him and spilled out of him onto the next 5 people who came his way. One of those 5 was Eric, a teenage boy whose sacks and such were way too much. When one dropped on the sidewalk, Peter stopped his play and rushed right over, saying, "Super Wheels to the rescue." Well, Eric, no longer stressed, was very impressed and made a mental note that very afternoon to help 5 people and to do it soon. One of those 5 was Di, his 5-year-old sister, who didn't have any friends and was painfully shy. When Eric said, "Hey, sis, want to come play at the park and learn how to ride my skateboard?" she looked at him wide-eyed. "Serious?" she cried. "Sure," he said. And because of her brother, Di decided maybe she could be a friend to 5 others. One of those 5 was Louise, a homeless woman who lived under the trees. She could barely believe her ears when she heard Di say, my brother and I buy you a hot dog and a drink at that stand over there?" Could it be true? Could somebody actually cared enough to give her food and a smiley face ring that was practically new? Louise was so pleased that she decided that even though she had nothing, she would find 5 others and give them something. One of those 5 was Amara, who lost her wallet in the park. Louise found it full of 5s and 10s and 20s. Oh, what she could do with all of that money. But she found Amara's name and called her home, and over she came. Amara was so impressed that Louise was honest when money was something she clearly needed, that she offered her a job at her store and vowed to do something generous for 5 people more. One of those 5 was Kate, a woman on vacation who wanted to see a show she'd heard was a sensation. Oh no, she said, it's sold out, but I'm going home tomorrow, and her face filled with sorrow. Amara held out her ticket. I live here, she said. I can go anytime. Take mine. Kate loved the show and was so touched that she thought buying 5 presents for 5 people back home would really be fun. And one of those 5 presents was a little heart necklace for Mary, her niece. And you should have seen her eyes light up in surprise. Mary? What? Ordinary Mary? Yes, Ordinary Mary's extraordinary deed had come back full circle on its way. It had changed the lives of every person living. You see, when Mrs. Bishop made muffins from Mary's blueberries, not only the paper boy, Billy Parker, but the 4 other people too made 5 people smiled, and those 5 people did too. And after a while, in only 15 days, love was sent to every person, everywhere. Just see how it went. 1, 5, 25, 125, 625, and on and on and on. Well, 6 billion is even more than all the people on the planet. So after everyone had a share and everybody knew that somebody cared, there was even love left over. The world was changed. And thousands and millions and billions agreed it was all because on one ordinary day, Ordinary Mary did a perfectly ordinary, stunningly earth-shaking, totally extraordinary deed. As you think about the story and talk about it with your friends and family that are around you, wonder if you can identify all the good deeds in this story, all of the kindness and all the love that went around the planet. And I challenge you, what 5 things can you do, you, ordinary you, do to show kindness or love or affection or attention to somebody in your world?
Thanks, Jamili. That was a great story about kindness and gratitude. These words of offering come from Reverend Michael Schuler. If you are proud of this church, become its advocate. If you're concerned for its future, share its message. If its values resonate deep within you, give it a measure of your devotion. This church cannot survive without your faith, your confidence, and your enthusiasm. Its destiny, the larger hope, rests in your hands. The life of our congregation has continued throughout this pandemic. Even though we are not meeting in person, our congregation depends on your and all of our financial support. Your monetary gifts are signs of your gratitude for this community. To support our congregation, you can send a check to the office, give online at uuctucson.org/donate, or text 833-361-5796. Today's reading is called A Gospel Chorus. The gospel speaks to hope rising up from suffering. In the music, we are not alone. Each of our struggles is joined. A congregation of voices shares a battle with cancer, the loss of a parent, the struggles of a child, the massacre of children. From the depths of pain, we look toward joy, toward gratitude, toward what we find worthy of praise. In the church where my mother took me as a child, we sang, "Let my people go." I love the singing. For the beauty of the earth, my father took us hiking. I seem to prefer his cathedrals, the mountains, where always I could see light shining through the cycle of our days. We sang as we climbed. I hear our imperative to go down and tell old Pharaoh with all of our voices. For no matter how desperate our situation, how deep our debt, how grievous our loss, how hateful our transgressions, we can always find something praiseworthy, something to make us grateful, some glimmer of hope, some promise of joy. That is the good news we sing.
Thank you, Betsy. When was the last time you prayed? If we were here in person, that question might have elicited a few kind of surprise laughters, right? Is she serious? Me? Pray? Unitarian Universalists pray? No. Yes, I'm serious. And no, I don't mean that type of praying. I'm not talking about the prayer of request for anything, but the prayer of gratitude for your relatedness. I'm talking about the type of prayer that many of you shared over a particularly scrumptious meal earlier this week. Writer Anne Lamott, who Jamili quoted in the introduction to her story earlier, says that prayer is private, even when we pray with others. It is communication from the heart to that which surpasses our understanding. The Greeks called it the really real, whatever lies within us, beyond the scrim of our values, positions, convictions, and wounds. Or we could say that it's a cry from deep within to life or love with capital L's. Anne Lamott wrote about that in her book, Help, Thanks, Wow. It was a bestseller a little more than a decade ago. And in this book, she makes prayer really simple and accessible, even for a non-theistic audience. She makes clear that prayer does not need to be to or for something, but rather because of something. Because someone you know and love is suffering. Because you are feeling ungrounded. Because your addiction has overcome you. Because you feel like your life is falling apart. Because human words and concepts cannot capture whatever you are feeling, because you don't know what else to do. In viewing prayer as a response rather than a request, the act of praying becomes an acknowledgement of our relatedness. Prayer comes out of something that is really real. Our interdependence with the web of creation and all life in it. Mari Eldridge captured the breadth of the practice of prayer really beautifully in that reading earlier. Not only can prayer come through song, but it can happen in nature, They wrote, "For the beauty of the earth, my father took us hiking. I seemed to prefer his cathedrals, the mountains, where always I could see light shining through the cycles of our days." And Mari makes clear that prayer is not always for a thing, but because of something, because they felt pain, because they are still alive, they prayed. Prayer does not necessarily come with expectation or supplication. Prayer can just be about relationships, our relationship to everything that is. Whatever name or metaphor you use for that which is bigger than yourself, prayer can be a way to connect you to that thing that is not you, but that you know you are related to. And if we can see prayer as this way of relating, the practice of gratitude, how it multiplies and passes on through prayer becomes apparent. In a message to our congregation, as well as the 1,000 other Unitarian Universalist congregations earlier this week, your UUA president, Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, shared one practice of gratitude. She said that she used to try to think of one thing she was grateful for every time she crossed the threshold of her house, every time she left, every time she came back. In this way, gratitude became a practice that happened multiple times a day. Reverend Susan Frederick Gray calls us to concrete practices of gratitude because, in her words, gratitude has the power to deeply change our perspective. It has the power to reshape our communities and our culture. Gratitude is a concrete practice that with time unlocks a generosity of spirit and a generosity of love. I wonder what your regular practice of gratitude is or could be. What way can you continually be reminded of that which you are grateful for, of that which you are connected to? And here is where I come back to prayer as one option. In her book, Help, Thanks, Wow, Anne Lamott says that there are 3 parts to prayer, and she reveals them right in the title of her book. Help, Thanks, Wow. Lamott's definitions of these words take some theological translating, but the translation is relatively easy. Help is the beginning part of the prayer because, in her words, you have to admit defeat. Another way to interpret this is to admit that in life, none of us can go at it alone. You can't go at it alone. I can't go at it alone. Lamott says this prayer is directed not towards anyone or anything that will hear it, but to, in her words, the next concentric circle out that is not me. Help. Thanks is the second part of this prayer. Lamott's gratitude, thankfulness, arises from her conviction that help is available. A Unitarian Universalist translation of this is that we are not actually ever alone, no matter how strongly we feel that. We are interconnected with all of creation. Thanks. And that gratitude for our relatedness, nestled in the heart of a prayer, can lead us to that wow. That being in awe of all that is. The first source of Unitarian Universalism, which is, quote, direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. Wow. It is not an accident, I don't think, that Lamott centers gratitude in this simple prayer structure. And while some of us might never consider what we do praying, I think that experiencing gratitude, as I led us to earlier in our bodies, saying that out loud, concretely and consciously, is one way to remind ourselves of our connection to that interdependent web of life. And for me, every time we do that, it's a small or big prayer. Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Galen Gingrich who is the pastor at All Souls in New York City, wrote a book called The Way of Gratitude. And I didn't read the whole book, but in an interview for the book, here's what he said. The way of gratitude, as I call it, he writes, recognizes that everything in the universe is made up of relationships, which is why our relationships with ourselves, with other people, and with the natural world matter more than anything else. The way of gratitude calls us to champion ways of thinking and living that strengthen the relationships between and among people and the natural world. Help, thanks, wow. Or, you are not alone in this. Thank goodness. You are interconnected with all of creation. This is not a call to embrace a prayer practice if you don't want to have one, but maybe it's a call to consider how what you already are doing might be prayers of gratitude. This is a call in some ways to echo that call from Reverend Susan Frederick Gray to call us to commit to practices of gratitude, practices that remind us of our not aloneness, which reinforce our seventh principle in our lives, that principle that calls us to affirm the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. And now feels like a good time to hear some words from a voice beloved by many, the poet Mary Oliver in her poem, Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about your despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscape, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination. Calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Friends, you do not have to be good, but you must know that you are not alone. I am grateful for you.
Come go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come go with me to that land. Where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come go with me to that land. Come go with me to that land. Come go with me to that land. Where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. Where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. Where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. Where I'm bound, there'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. Where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land, oh Lord. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. Where our power, we'll be singing in that land. We'll be singing in that land. We'll be singing in that land. Where our power, they'll be singing in that land. Where I'm
It is so good to hear familiar voices. You all fill my spirit. Our words of closing come from Reverend Joseph Cherry. If we have any hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to step into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, loving enough to forgive ourselves and others. May we, as a people of faith, be granted the strength to be so brave, so bold, and so loving. And now Betsy is going to extinguish our chalice as we read together these words from Deborah Burrell. We have basked in the warmth and beauty of this flame and this community. As the chalice flame is extinguished, let us carry its glow within. Let us kindle new sparks within these walls and beyond.